The Webb telescope has captured a giant fountain on Enceladus. With the help of the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers have detected a huge fountain of water gushing into space from Enceladus, Saturn's icy moon. This stream extends to about 10,000 kilometers. Nearly 20 years ago, the Cassini spacecraft discovered plumes of water vapor emanating from fissures in the ice cap of Enceladus, one of Saturn's many moons. Now, the James Webb Telescope has captured the largest recorded jet of water spewed from the moon's geysers. A geyser on Enceladus ejected water in the form of steam and ice into space at a distance of about 9,600 kilometers. This is 20 times the size of Enceladus itself, which has a diameter of about 500 kilometers. This has given scientists unprecedented insight into how the moon's geysers can supply material to Saturn's icy rings. Geysers detected on Enceladus in 2005 proved that the moon is not a solid, frozen ball. Under its crust is a liquid ocean. Liquid water can exist because of the heat generated by Saturn's gravity. And where there is liquid water, there can be life. The question of life on the moon remains open, because it is currently not possible to break through miles of ice so far from Earth. In 2011, scientists discovered that Enceladus is not only actively ejecting water into space. Its geysers generate a diffuse and fuzzy ring of microscopic frozen particles, mainly composed of ice, silicates, carbon dioxide and ammonia. Enceladus orbits Saturn relatively quickly, in just 33 hours, explains study co-author Gonzalo Villeneuve. As it orbits Saturn, its jets basically spit out water, leaving behind a halo. In Webb's observations, not only was the plume huge, but water was absolutely everywhere. Data on Enceladus is from November 2022. The telescope then managed to capture a huge plume coming out of the geyser. With the data obtained, the researchers calculated that the geyser on the moon was spewing water vapor at a rate of 300 liters per second. Despite this, scientists believe that with the current level of technology, the plumes are too scattered to detect possible signs of life in them. Despite this, the study of Saturn's moon will continue. The James Webb Telescope will soon be headed for Enceladus again. Scientists will look for signs of life on it. Scientists have identified mathematical neurons. What happens in our brain during calculations is still largely unknown. German scientists have noticed that some neurons are only active during certain operations. They identified neurons that fire only during addition. They also found some that are only active during subtraction. The results were published in the journal Current Biology. New research by German scientists sheds a little more light on what happens in our brains during calculations. We found that different neurons are activated during addition, and others during subtraction, explained the co-leader of the research, Professor Florian Moorman. This study is an important step towards a better understanding of one of our most important symbolic abilities, namely, working with numbers. The research was conducted in collaboration with the Epileptology Department of the University Hospital Bonn. This unit specializes in brain surgery for people with epilepsy. In some patients, the source of the seizures is always the same area of the brain. Scientists use electrodes implanted in patients to locate it. These probes can be used to precisely identify the damaged area, but they can also be used to measure the activity of individual neurons. The researchers measured neuronal activity in 9 patients, 5 women and 4 men. Subjects had electrodes implanted in the temporal lobe. They were asked to perform simple arithmetic tasks. While analyzing the activity of the neurons, the researchers noticed that different neurons fired depending on whether the subjects were adding or subtracting. But it didn't look like some neurons responded only to the plus sign and others only to the sign. Even when we replaced the mathematical symbols with words, the effect remained the same. For example, when subjects were asked to calculate 5 and 3, the addition neurons kicked in, while for 7 minus 4 feet the subtraction neurons showed activity, explained Esther Cutter, PhD student in Professor Mormon. These experiments suggest that the identified neurons actually encode mathematical instructions. Researchers fed the observed activity patterns into a self-learning computer program. Initially, as part of the training, they prompted him what actions the subjects were performing. Over time, the program started working on its own. The activity of the neurons was so pronounced that the program was able to determine exactly which operation was being performed based only on how the neurons behaved. From experiments on monkeys, we know that neurons specific to certain computational rules also exist in their brains, said co-leader Professor Andreas Nieder from the University of Tübingen. However, he noted that until now there was no data on humans. Their findings indicate that human brains have the same kinds of specific cells that encode specific mathematical instructions for action. Researchers have also identified the protein in young CSF that is probably most responsible for the beneficial changes, fibroblast growth factor 17, FGF17. The FGF17 infusion had a similar memory restoring effect as the cerebrospinal fluid infusion. Furthermore, giving the mice an antibody that blocked FGF17 function impaired the mice's memory capacity. The authors of the study even applied for a patent for their findings on FGF17. The robot with pigeon feathers flies like a living bird. A group of scientists from Stanford University have developed a flying robot that behaves almost like a bird in the air. PigeonBot is the size of a pigeon and is also equipped with its real feathers. It can change the shape of its wings and the spacing of its feathers in flight, allowing it to move gracefully across the sky. Understanding how birds fly is no easy task, but where better to look for clues than with the birds themselves. So did David Lentink of Stanford University. Observing birds allowed him to construct a flying robot whose wings can change shape during flight. What's more, this robot can also manipulate the spacing of feathers. PigeonBot, as the robot was named, offers a new perspective on flight and could pave the way for more agile aerial machines. The research results were published in the journal Science Robotics. My dream is to develop robots that fly like birds. It would be a big step forward, Lentnik admitted. Birds can modify the shape of their wings by spreading their feathers or bringing them closer together. This allows for faster and more agile flight and precise maneuvers. Using new insights into how pigeon wing joints control feather spacing, scientists have built a robotic pigeon that behaves almost like a bird in flight. PigeonBot has been equipped with real pigeon feathers. It is powered by a propeller and has a speed of about 40 km per hour. Its construction was modeled on the skeletal structures of pigeons and the movements of their feathers. The most noteworthy feature is the design of the wings, which are built to bend in the same places where birds have wrist and finger joints. It can be controlled remotely. A group from Stanford University began their research by analyzing the structure of the wings of dead pigeons. The researchers were primarily interested in how birds control their shape. We put markers on the wings and just moved them. This allowed us to accurately measure the relationship between the movement of the feathers and the movement of the bones, Lenting revealed. These experiments showed that the angles of movement of the two joints, the wrist and the finger, had the greatest influence on the position of the feathers. The orientations of the long, stiff feathers support the bird in flight control and determine the shape of the wing. We discovered how birds are able to smoothly change the shape of a wing in a surprisingly simple way, said Lenting, adding that the research provided evidence that birds can control their flight with just one joint. The researchers also observed that the angle of the wrist determined the angles of all flight feathers at one time, meaning birds could change the shape of their wings without having to control individual feathers. This reduces the number of variables required to model the wings. In tests of the robot, the team also showed that bending only one of the floats allows it to make a twist. In a second study published in the journal Science, and also co-authored by Lentnik, the researchers used PigeonBot to see how birds prevent too large gaps between their feathers when their wings are spread out. In experiments where one bird's feather was layered on top of another to mimic overlapping feathers during flight, the researchers found that the feathers initially pulled apart easily, but then caught on. Electron and X-ray microscopy images revealed tiny hooks just a few micrometers long that allow the feathers to move apart while ensuring they don't spread too far apart. It's like Velcro that holds the feathers together, Lentnik explained. Galaxies without dark matter. New observations reveal another example. The distant galaxy AGC 114905 may be completely devoid of dark matter. An international team of astronomers has found no trace of it, despite extensive research. If the scientists' findings are confirmed, it could disprove fundamental theories about the formation of galaxies, as dark matter is believed to be crucial to this process. There are no signs of dark matter in the galaxy AGC 114905. According to an international team of astronomers led by Pavel Mansir-Pine from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, who is also involved in the work of the Dutch Institute of Radio Astronomy Astron. Pine and colleagues took their first look at the galaxy AGC 114905 in 2019. The observations suggested that the galaxy might not contain dark matter. To be sure, the astronomers repeated their measurements. After 40 hours of detailed observations with the Very Large Array, VLA, in New Mexico, USA, the evidence for a galaxy free of dark matter has become stronger. The galaxy AGC 114905 is about 250 million light-years from Earth. It belongs to a class of galaxies called ultra-diffuse dwarf galaxies. However, the term dwarf refers not to its size, but to its brightness. AGC 114905 is about the size of the Milky Way, but contains 1,000 times fewer stars. At first glance, it appears to be just like any other galaxy. But a closer look reveals a mystery. AGC 114905 contains no dark matter. Dark matter is thought to be the glue that holds stars, gas and dust together to form galaxies. The prevailing idea is that all galaxies, and certainly ultra-diffuse dwarf galaxies, can only exist if they are held together by dark matter. Dark matter is a hypothetical matter that, according to assumptions, neither emits nor reflects light, so it is very difficult to detect. But its existence is betrayed by its gravitational effects. This is how scientists explain anomalies in the rotation of galaxies and the movement of galaxies in clusters. Despite years of searching, its existence has not been confirmed. Scientists are still trying to figure out what the exact nature of dark matter is and what creates it. In principle, such galaxies should not exist. We cannot explain their existence with any theory, said Manserapina. When Manserapina and his colleagues first looked at AGC 114905 in 2019, they suspected that it might not contain dark matter due to its rotation. The speed at which a galaxy rotates shows how much material it contains. The more massive the galaxy, the stronger its gravity and the faster it spins. By comparing the speed of rotation with the amount of matter observed in it, the amount of stars, gas and dust, astronomers can try to estimate how much dark matter must be there to account for the speed of the galaxy. But because AGC 114905 is faintly visible, scientists initially did not have enough data to fully determine its rotation rate. So they repeated their measurements using the VLA radio telescope. They mapped the gas present in AGC 114905 and determined how fast it was moving. This allowed them to determine the rotation rate of the galaxy, and thus how much dark matter is in it. The results of subsequent measurements showed that the movement of the gas could be explained by ordinary matter, which eventually led him to the conclusion that there is no dark matter in AGC 114905. This is obviously what we expected and hoped for, because it confirms our previous measurements. But the problem remains because theory predicts that there must be dark matter in AGC 114905, and our observations indicate that this is not the case. In fact, the gap between theory and observation is only getting bigger, said Manserapina. In their publication, the scientists list possible explanations for the lack of dark matter. For example, AGC 114905 may have been stripped of its dark matter by large, nearby galaxies, only they are not there. In the best-known model of galaxy formation, the so-called cold dark matter model, CDM, editorial note, we would have to introduce extreme parameter values that go far beyond the usual range. Also in the alternative theory of cold dark matter, the so-called with the use of modified Newtonian dynamics, MOND, editorial note, we cannot reconstruct the motions of gas in the galaxy, Manserapina explained. According to the researchers, there is one assumption that may change their conclusions. This is the estimated angle at which they believe they are observing the galaxy. But this angle would have to deviate significantly from our estimates before there would be room for dark matter again, said co-author Tom Oosterloo of the Netherlands Institute for Radio Astronomy. Astron. This is not the first galaxy that does not appear to contain dark matter. In 2018, a team of astronomers led by Peter van Dokkum of Yale University discovered the galaxy NGC 1052 DF2, which also appears to be devoid of dark matter. But this galaxy is a bit different from AGC 114905. NGC 1052 DF2 lacks a noticeable central region or even the spiral arms and disk typical of a spiral galaxy. But it doesn't look like an elliptical galaxy either. There is also no sign that there is a black hole at its center. The discovery by the Dutch scientists challenges the theory of galaxy formation. as dark matter is believed to be essential for galaxy formation because its gravity helps to accumulate the relatively rarer ordinary matter. If there are galaxies without dark matter, it means that dark matter is not needed to form galaxies. We've been trying to understand what dark matter is for the last 50 years, but we seem to have hit a dead end, said Manserapina. By carefully studying this galaxy and others like it, astronomers may be able to determine what dark matter actually is. The previously mentioned Peter van Dokkum, who was not involved in this research, assessed that the new findings are promising and significant. But Dutch astronomers will need more analysis to make sure that this galaxy is truly devoid of dark matter. There will be a lot of discussion. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, Van Dokkum said. Meanwhile, Dutch scientists plan to further study AGC 114905. They also want to check other ultra-diffuse dwarf galaxies that may also be devoid of dark matter. Scientists have developed a building material that lives and can reproduce. Researchers at the University of Colorado have developed a building material that lives. It is a mixture of sand and cyanobacteria and a few other ingredients. The new material can grow and repair itself, and has a much smaller carbon footprint. Moreover, it can reproduce. Researchers have shown that up to 8 bricks in 3 generations can be made from one parent brick. Cement and concrete production has changed little over the last 100 years. The work of researchers from Colorado is something completely new in this field. Their method, presented in the journal Matter, combines sand and bacteria, resulting in a living material with structural load-bearing capacity and biological function. We already use biological materials in our buildings, such as wood, but these materials no longer live. But why not keep them alive and let biology do something useful too? Said Will Srubar, one of the paper's authors and head of the Living Materials Laboratory at the University of Colorado, Boulder. The authors of the publication admitted that living buildings are not just a melody of the distant future. The possibilities of the technology developed by them, primarily to keep bacteria alive, have several advantages that the technologies currently used in construction cannot provide. Structures created using living materials may one day seal their own cracks or suck dangerous toxins from the air. The material developed by the engineers has a sand and hydrogel scaffold. The hydrogel retains moisture and nutrients so that bacteria can multiply and mineralize, a process similar to the formation of shells in the ocean. By combining cyanobacteria, hydrogel and sand, scientists have created a living material that is similar in strength to cement mortar. The researchers experimented with cyanobacteria belonging to the genus Senecococcus. Under the right conditions, these microbes absorb carbon dioxide, which stimulates their growth. At the same time, they produce calcium carbonate, which is one of the ingredients in the production of concrete and cement. We use photosynthetic cyanobacteria to biomineralize the scaffold. It's kind of like Frankenstein material. But that's what we're trying to create, something that stays alive, Srubar said. The material developed by American scientists is not only a living building material, but can also regenerate. By splitting a brick of such material in half, adding hydrogel, sand, nutrients and water, bacteria can grow into 2 complete bricks. Srubar and his team showed that one mother brick can reproduce up to 8 bricks in 3 generations. We are excited that this is challenging conventional ways of producing building materials. This really demonstrates the potential for exponential production of materials, said Srubar. Live material brick must be fully dried to achieve maximum strength. However, drying impairs the viability of cyanobacteria. To preserve structural function and ensure microbial survival, the concept of optimal humidity and storage conditions is crucial. Using humidity and temperature, researchers can control when the bacteria are growing and when the material is dormant to perform structural functions. It is a material platform that is paving the way for exciting new materials that can be designed to work together and react to their environment. We're just trying to bring building materials to life. We are laying the foundations of a new discipline, said Srubar. The next step for Srubar and his team is to explore the numerous applications that the materials platform he mentioned brings. Srubar envisages introducing bacteria with different functions to create new materials with biological functions, such as materials that detect and respond to toxins in the air. Other uses include building structures in places where resources are limited, such as a desert or even another planet, Mars. In a harsh environment, these materials would be particularly good because they use sunlight to grow and multiply with very little exogenous material needed for their growth. You won't have to haul sacks of cement all the way to Mars, Srubar explained. The solution created by Californian researchers is also ecological. Worldwide production of cement and concrete for construction generates almost 6% of GDP. Annual carbon dioxide emissions. As an added bonus, such bricks would actually remove carbon dioxide from the air, using it for growth.